Welcome to round 2 of the budget sessions. Tonight we are going to hear from the police, city clerk, city council, license commission, and the elections budget. We will begin with inviting Chief Robert Demora to the table and Captain Charles Tasker. Good evening, gentlemen.
Good evening. Councilors, good evening. Good evening, Councilors.
Welcome. We usually begin our budget sessions by asking the department heads to give us an overview of their department, and then we will get into the number crunching session. Chief Demora?
Good evening. As you probably know, nothing good's happening this year with the police department with the potential layoffs that are coming up. From FY07, we're going from a total complement of 92 sworn police officers to the fiscal 09, 81 total complement of the police department. That's down significantly. And if you look at the civilian side of the house, from 07, we had 27 civilians working for the police department. That number is going down to 8. So it's clearly a reduction over the year and a half, 2 years, with approximately $1.6 million in our operating budget, which is very important. And that breaks down to 63 patrolmen, 10 sergeants, 4 lieutenants, 3 captains, for a total sworn complement of 81, including myself. And that's 8 civilians. There's 4 clerks, custodian, mechanic that is, that's working on a somewhat of a depleted complement of vehicles. He's doing the best he can. We're trying to keep 11 vehicles up and running at all given times, utilizing. If you go through by our police department, you may see cruisers in the yard, the front parking area. Those are units that are not actually online. Those are units that we're using for parts when we need them, such as transmissions or doors or fenders. So we're trying to save everything we can in that area. So when you look at a position of our police department going down to a total complement of 81 sworn officers, you also look at the civilian side. We're also losing some of our IT personnel that clearly we need to operate our 24-hour, 7-day-a-week operation. We don't close down Friday afternoon. We don't go home on weekends. We're here working around the clocks. It's the probability of us needing IT persons very vital to our organization. But I believe, under the mayor's plan, we will accomplish that continuously. We might need to call in people during the weekend, but I believe we can also accomplish that. So when you look at the budget, out of the 6.2 projected budget for this year, $5.9 million of that goes to salaries. So that leaves us with very little. We're very lean to purchase items to continue the infrastructure of the police department, making sure the lights work, the electricity works, the water comes in, to make sure we have oil for our cruisers, tires for our cruisers, the equipment that you need to continuously run a 24-hour day operation. So with that said, one of our goals is, with the pending reduction of the patrol force by 6 officers, and remember a year and a half ago, I believe, in this council, we took 9 police officers off the street and put them in as dispatchers. So in a short period of time, we're taking 15 police officers off the street, which clearly will reduce what we need to get accomplished every day for public safety. So when you look at one of the goals that I looked at, reorganization is something that we might be doing. We have to do it. We have to reorganize the police department. And one of the first areas that I focused on was the command staff at the captain's level. We're going to be implementing a slight change in the captain's functions. We're going to have a captain that's focused on the operation side of the house. That includes patrol. We're going to have a captain that's focused on investigative services. That has to do with somewhat of the support of the patrol force. And the 3rd captain will be the Support Service Bureau that clearly runs the organization, that runs the infrastructure on a day-to-day basis. With that said, when you look at reorganization of the police department, we have to look at how we're policing the public. And I sat before this council just a short time ago, I believe, April 14th, which wasn't that long ago, and I pledged to you that in my priority would be public safety, visibility of police officers. And that's what I'm going to do in the reorganization. That is still a work in progress. It's fluid at this time. We met with our union yesterday. We spoke about it, but it's something that we're still working on. And I'd rather, if we need to talk about it, we could at some point during this conversation. I think this council will be pleased with what we are proposing to do for the city. It is clear. It's my mandate from going to the, probably out of all the wards here, probably 5 of them in the recent month, it's mandated that people are concerned about traffic issues. They're concerned about vandalism, noise complaints. It's probably most of, the biggest priority in the ward district. So, and that will be our focus on when we redeploy our police officers in the department. And naturally, what comes with this redeployment is a reduction of some services that we've had in the police department. We've reduced some areas that we feel, as a command staff of the police department, that it's necessary to accomplish the reduced finances in the budget. Two of the areas that I'm looking at potentially to bring revenue in through the city, but through the police department as the catalyst tool, would be implementing a city ordinance that allows the police department to pick a tow company would work under the direction of the police department that would tow for the police department. That could bring additional resources in, which is very minimal, but I think it's a start that we can look at as a organization that typically is something that we don't do a lot of bringing revenue in, maybe through Chapter 90. And one of the last areas that I focus on is the Chapter 90 funds. I met with the mayor. We spoke about potentially bringing some funding through that, through a state program that allows Chapter 90 funds to be recycled through the police department on a percentage what the city gets, and to use that as a focal point of continuously looking at traffic issues in the city, which I've been told through the wards and city councilors, and it trickles down to the civilians, that we want to make sure we miss a beat on. We make sure we have traffic officers out there. Two of the areas that I'm focused on, as we see here, is partnerships with the Fitchburg State College to bring in potentially some initiatives through internships and also through grants. I have a student now from Fitchburg State College working on 2 grants for the police department. Hopefully, within the next few weeks, they'll be completed, submitted, in a short period of time, if we get some additional funding for the police department. So I'm hoping to also, within the next year, is to bring aboard into the police department a grant writer, specifically focused on the police department. As to the budget, I'll be open for questions.
Prior to taking questions from the councilors, I'd just like to read off what you have in your budget so that those both here that are not members of the council and the taxpayers at home can understand what this budget contains. The total police personal services in FY08 was $6,610,469. The request from the mayor is down to $5,954,510. Total police service contracts were $6,500 in FY08, down to $5,500 in FY09. Total police other expenses, FY08, $53,700, dropped to $40,546. Total police equipment and repair, $269,700 in FY08. In FY09, $260,000. So the total police budget requested by the mayor is $6,260,556, down from $6,940,369 in FY08. Questions from the councilors, please. Councilor Hay.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Mr. President,
Thank you for promoting.
for the promotion. I guess I'd like to start by making a comment that we have the police department here in front of us tonight, talking about numbers that the president just indicated as reductions in the budgets that are overwhelming. We'll have the fire department before us in a week or so with the same thing with numbers. These are the cornerstones of our community. This is public safety. I would hope that this council will look at this, and I understand that the mayor has made very difficult decisions here, and that she inherited a situation that she needed to address. But I hope that once we get through this process, this council will give serious consideration to the petition that we have before us regarding establishing a maximum number and a minimum number for both the fire department and the police department, so that in the future mayors would not be able to balance the budget on the backs of public safety, which is again what's happening here and has happened over and over. Every time the city gets in trouble, we whack the police and we whack the fire departments, and then people complain about services that they're getting from the fire department and the police department. That's not fair. I'd like to see us establish a number, and that minimum number, that maximum number, would be guidelines that the mayor would need to adhere to in writing the budget each year. So it's something that we need to address at a further date, but it hopefully will get addressed, and then we wouldn't be sitting here with our public safety personnel coming in with such drastic numbers and such drastic cuts. Thank you.
Just to expand a bit on what Councilor Hay has said, he had a petition before the City Council, I believe during the last administration, asking for a study of both the police and fire department table of organization. You know, we hear that we don't have enough policemen, we don't have enough firefighters, or some people say we've got too many or we've got just enough. Let's settle the question once and for all. Let's have some professionals come in, do a study of our public safety, because we're kidding ourselves right now with this budget. I know we have to live with this budget, but public safety should be the #1 priority right now, especially in the city of Fitchburg. I believe the police department is doing a fantastic job with what personnel and equipment that they have. But we need to do more for our city. More questions on line items, please. Councilor Di Natale.
Thank you, Mr. President. Chief, Captain Tasker, thank you for coming before us. And I just wanted to say I read the police report, the annual report 2007, and it was very positive news. I recall arrests were down again, and the certain areas of levels of crime have been down. So I don't think you get enough credit for that in the media, so good job on that with the resources you have. I'm a number cruncher, and I was frustrated and disappointed that I did not see in the line items police cruiser replacements. That is my #1 priority out of any line item in the entire fiscal budget, is getting 5 new cruisers maximum for the police department next year. It was put into the budget last year, and then it was taken out to save officers, and more money was put into auto repair, and I understood that logic. But for a department that uses their vehicles all day, every day, these cars have a turnaround time of 2 to 3 years max. And I recall last year's budget session, I don't recall what captain it was, but they stated that the oldest car we have is almost 7 years old, 2001 model, and the mileage is astronomical. And you stated yourself in your presentation that your mechanic is doing his best to keep up with these cars, but, you know, it's very difficult. So I was very disappointed not to see money put in here, 130, 150,000, I believe the number is 30,000 per car. So what I was going to suggest, and I ask you to understand this, any cuts that I would like to propose to this police budget, I want to see reallocated. I want to see it put towards exclusively police cruisers. Obviously, the council cannot say where that money would go, but I would ask you and your staff, if that happens, to lobby the mayor as hard as you can to make her, give her insight into the fact that if we free up some money, we can allocate it to the infrastructure of the cars, the capital investment. I started with the overtime and the holiday accounts. And first, the overtime account. Fiscal year '08, the overtime account was $425,000. In our last packets we received, through May 8th, the overtime budget has been spent $290,000. So it's about 64% spent, leaving about $130,000 remaining for 7 weeks. And I was told by officials and members of the department that that had a lot to do with the civilian dispatchers no longer being here. That had a positive effect on the overtime account. And again, I'm going on the numbers. Based on that spend rate, this account will probably reach around $320 by the end of the year. Roughly $100,000 under budget. The mayor is giving you next year $400,000. She's cutting it 25 from this year's appropriation. Based on the numbers alone, and the reasons I've been told why they're low, I believe we can reallocate $50,000 of that $400,000 to police cruisers. I would like to suggest down the road that we move that money from that account to the purchase of 2 new cruisers, just on that alone, based purely on the numbers. And my logic is this way. If the police spend about $320 this year, as they're, coming toward that number, that's about a $100,000 underrun. The mayor's giving $400,000. If we're going to spend $320 this year, my suggestion would be that we allocate $350,000 for overtime, which is still $30,000 more than what we would probably spend this year, and free up money for the mayor to reallocate to a desperately needed critical capital improvement that we need to do. Because I don't think we can go another year doing this, because then we're going to end up taking out a bond, and we're going to end up increasing our debt structure, and we're going to increase our interest payments every year. It just doesn't make sense to me. What I'm proposing, or what I suggest, is that, based on those numbers, I believe the department can get by with $350 next year. And we can take 50 of that and allocate it for a couple of cruisers. The same logic I applied to the holiday account. Holiday account was $362,815. That was the budget number that I had on the status sheet through April. Through April, $200,000 of that number has been spent. Only 55%. And I'm not questioning why it wasn't being spent. I mean, I understand things happen. We pad numbers a little bit just in case, because we don't know what's going to happen through the year, and that's fine. But, the estimate is probably, this is going to underrun $120,000. We've spent $200,000. The budget's $362,000. We only have 7 weeks left. Again, I see that account underrunning significantly. The mayor is giving you, the department, $347,000. And I'm estimating that we're only going to spend about $230,000 of that this year. So I would like to make a suggestion as well that we cut $47,000 from that number, which would still leave you $300,000 in the holiday account, and you're probably going to spend about $230,000 of that this year. So it's still $70,000 more than what the spend rate is this year. That's how I base my logic, purely on the spend rates and on the numbers. I know things can change, but even with those 2 cuts, in my opinion, you're still left with a lot of cushion from what you were spending this year. And I look at the personal services account from FY06 and FY07. The police personal services account underran by $150,000 in FY06, and it underran by $261,000 in FY07. So I really believe these are cuts that will not hamper your efforts. It'll still leave you more money to use than what you had, than what you were spending this year, and that's $100,000, I believe, with the mayor's approval, we can lobby her to allocate to the purchase of 3 or 4 new cruisers. There's other money in the budget that I'd like to suggest move around, because my ultimate goal is to free up $150 to get you 5 new cars. But just those 2 line item accounts alone is $100,000 that I would suggest at the end of these sessions we cut, with the strong recommendation, with your acceptance, of course, that we allocate that to police cruiser purchasing. And I just wanted to know what you thought about that.
Well, my first thought process here would be, when you look at the overtime account, the reason why there's money left in the overtime account, because police officers took that role over in dispatching, and we've used officers, when an officer was out sick or out on a day off from dispatch, we filled it in because we had the officers working. We're losing 6 officers, July 1st. We won't have anybody to fill in anymore. We have to hire on overtime. Dispatches, someone has to answer the phone when the public calls 911. The other stuff we can wait on, but we cannot prevent officers from going to calls. We have to have somebody answering those phone calls. So what you're saying is, up until now, we've been okay, and we've actually saved money from this last budget because there's money there. Well, the reason why there's money there is because we had officers that could fill in for them. When we reduce the ranks by 6, we clearly won't have, and that money goes fast. When we have to put 2 people in that radio room at all times, the money goes awful fast. When someone's on vacation, now we're going to start continuously using people. With 6 less officers on the force, we're going to start using a guy who takes vacation from in there, we have to fill him for a week. So if we don't have that cushion of money to utilize for those, for that dispatch, just the dispatching area, never mind what I anticipate increasing court time because of a street unit that we're trying to form, a community response unit we're trying to form, that we're going to be increasing our court time. So when you look at there's a cushion of money there now, it's because we used it smartly. We used our resources. We had resources. We won't have resources this time next year, this time in 2 months from now.
So,
And in the area of holiday, I'll defer that to Captain Tasker.
I guess my thought process, and I understand that you're losing more guys, so that would probably increase the overtime, but that's why I didn't suggest that we cut it right down to what you spent. Even with the cuts that I'd like to propose down the road, it would still leave $40,000, $50,000 more in each account than what you spent this year. And that $50,000 is not adequate to cover.
We're losing 6 bodies. That's an awful lot. That's a lot of police protection. Even it's going to be in the room or it's going to be on the street. And if we all could predict the future, we'd be doing well. We're not sure what's going to happen. An officer goes out injured. If someone takes a leave of absence because of a health issue in the family, things that family leave acts that were mandated by statute to give people. If those things happen, right now they haven't happened. What if they do happen? An officer's wife gets pregnant. He takes 6 weeks off. Well, we just can't say, don't fill him where he goes. We need someone to replace him. Those issues are the unforeseen things that we as an organization have to be ready for. And I think with those cuts aren't small cuts, those are drastic cuts, especially in the overtime account. We already lost $25,000 from last year to this year. In what I've looked at since I've been here is the financial issue. So I'm going to make sure that we're spending every penny wisely, that we're going to make sure we get what I would say the bang for the buck. We're making sure we're spending, if it's overtime, it's because we need somebody to fill these positions. We're not just filling them in because we have extra money. And I'm very concerned what's going to happen this summer up into the fall with issues in the city.
And I understand that. I just, the cruiser issue for me is critical. When I hear officers and even command staff say that they're driving in cars that are, some of them are deplorable condition, I understand we're losing guys, but I don't feel comfortable allowing these guys to drive around in cars that may not be safe.
I don't either.
And
clearly liability-wise, when you're talking police officers versus cruisers or equipment, we need both. We need both. We just don't need a cruiser. We need someone to drive that cruiser. So what's more important to us is both of them. Our equipment's very important. We deal with life and death situations all the time. We can't go out there with a cruiser that might break down a half a mile away from a scene. We have to get there. So yes, cruisers are important to us. I would suggest to council, maybe there's other areas in the city that you can look at to get this revenue, because it is important to me, it's important to our organization as a whole, that we have dependable transportation for our job. And naturally, our job is similar to everyone's job here. Their cruiser is their office. Those cruisers right now don't have downtime. we have to start a maintenance program that we start cycling cruises through, so we never get to this position again. That's something we need to start thinking about as a city entity. And how do we do that? Well, we have to start at some point. But I think by looking at areas that we've had extra money in this year, it was done for a reason. I think everyone's seen in the police side of the house, seen the writing on the wall, that we have to tighten our belts. Especially, we took care of that overtime in dispatching. And clearly, that was one of my issues that I looked at when I looked at the finances. We spent an awful lot of money hiring people on overtime to fill in for dispatchers that were all sick. So we had to look at that. Right now, we were okay. We had officers. I'm just concerned that as this time goes on, we're not going to have the officers to fill that we need to spend the overtime in that area. That overtime fills in for vacation time, just general vacation time that's everyone required to take. And everyone takes 2 weeks in the summer, and they have approximately 70 hours a year that they can take off, officers. So that's a lot of time. So we have to make sure we have coverage for those. And as you think about that, just think about 6 less police officers that are doing that today. That's tomorrow they're not going to be here. I think that's very important to this council. That it's just not that we have extra money right there. We clearly are going to use that money. We would have used the $425,000, I believe, if we still had that. And as far as I'll defer to Captain Test on the holiday. I believe that's the holiday pay that we did. Yes.
With the holiday account, will we not survive next year with a $50,000 cut to the holiday account?
Well, first of all, Council, I applaud your desire to take care of this critical issue. No one feels stronger than I do. It seems to me you feel as strongly as I do about getting cars for the city officials. Of the 2 accounts you mentioned, the one that I could slant towards and say, well, perhaps you could take some, would be holidays, and not overtime. The reason for that is because holidays, as you've alluded to, in fact, many of the line items that are not predictable are based on a worst-case scenario. We have no way of knowing how many officers will be working on a particular holiday. The other thing we don't know about is the rate that officer will be compensated at. In other words, will it be a sergeant, lieutenant, etc., captain, chief. So we plan on that to be in a worst-case scenario. If you wanted to take some, take it from holidays. But I would leave overtime alone. And just building on the wonderful case the chief has made, the only other thing I could say about overtime is that we're losing 6 officers. Whatever 6 they are remains to be seen, but they will be young officers, those officers that have not yet attained that much contractual vacation time. So the benefit that you reap from them leaving is small. The ones that you have to contractually take care of for vacations, etc., which an employer is obligated to do, those are the ones that have the most vacation time, and those are the ones that remain on the department. And we certainly can't deprive an officer from taking time off that he or she has accrued. We have that obligation. If that involves paying more officers overtime, or allowing more officers to take time off, and filling those positions on an overtime position, then we really need to consider that. And that's where that money will come from, to take care of that contractual benefit.
Well, I appreciate your honesty, both of you, and your responses, and I'll definitely take that heavily into my considerations. Thank you, Mr. President.
Counselor, as we did last evening, if there was a suggestion from a counselor, we wrote it down, and the ultimate decision will be made by the full council when we do the review. So, Councilor Di Natale, if you wish to add those accounts, we will have the clerk record them, or Mr. Saracen record them, and we'll discuss them at the full council meeting.
Mr. President, can I add one right now, or wait till
Yes.
after? I'd like to add the holiday, 47,000. Thank you.
Just a comment on the overtime from the chair. You know, we're not isolated from a major local disaster or a major incident. one of those incidents can wipe out that account in an evening, and then some. So we will have to consider that. Councilor Caddy.
Just a question first for Captain Tasker. Is that amount, 47,000, is that agreeable to you? You think that's too much or too little?
Well, it's so hard to say. I find some relief in knowing that if it were short, that there would probably be enough to cover it in another line item, perhaps.
I guess you're the best person in the room to make that decision, so that's why I'm asking you.
Appreciate that.
Are you comfortable with that 47? Could it be more? Should it be less?
It shouldn't be more. Perhaps could be a little bit less.
This is a question for the chief, and you've been here a short time, but I think we've gotten to the point that we should start looking at a central dispatch system. We have a dispatcher over at the fire department. I believe that we're equipped to do that. I think that was in the plan when the station was built, that we would go to a central dispatch system where we could probably save one person, maybe. But that would probably be a fireman, because we'd be handling their calls. And the second thing I was thinking is, and this is, you don't need to answer the question because I'm catching you off guard, but what is it costing us to pay policemen to dispatch? Last night at our hearing, health inspector said that he's been paying one of his inspectors to work the counter. And I heard one of the councilors comment about that. We're paying too much for dispatch is what's happening. And when we went to civilian dispatches, we went in hopes of saving money. As it turned out, they unionized, and I think before they left, they were getting almost as much as a policeman. Same benefits, which is where a lot of the cost is, especially for the city. Has anyone explored looking at privatizing dispatch, where you won't be providing benefits, going to an outside agency, letting the outside agency provide us with dispatches? Therefore, we would never pay overtime. It's their responsibility to provide us with dispatches. And then thinking that in an emergency, you need bodies to go into dispatch, you could use a policeman to go in dispatch, but they would pay him at his overtime rate, not the city. Just an idea. I don't know if it's workable, but
Here's the answer to the issue to that. There is organized labor that has claim to that position, civilian dispatches. They're represented by the Teamsters, Local 170. So you couldn't, it would be an unfair labor practice to attempt to exclude the civilians who are presently in suit against the state from that position by privatizing. So you have a hurdle to overcome before you would be able to do that.
the hurdle is to settle that lawsuit, if there is in fact a lawsuit.
That's correct.
I'm just thinking out loud on this problem. We've got to put guys on the street. We're losing 6 guys. We've got to put guys on the street. The cheapest way to do that is to put cheaper bodies in dispatch and get the guys that are in dispatch back out on the street. Just an idea. Maybe something will materialize. Other than that, I'm really disappointed not to see the cruisers in the budget. I guess when we didn't buy them last year, when the time comes to buy them, we're probably going to have to buy all new cars. It's gone way beyond the point that I've ever seen. And I think the chief is right. I think we have to find the money from other sources outside the police department this year, but I think we're going to have to try to do that, and hopefully Councilor Di Natale and some others are as concerned about it as I am. And I think that's, with all the cuts that we have here, and it's absolutely terrible, I'm not willing to let the guys go without cars this year, so somehow we're going to find the money. Hopefully the mayor will put it there for you. Thank you.
Councilor Joseph?
Trying to figure out, just one thing I guess I kind of disagree with Councilor Di Natale on, again, is the contingency. The $150,000 is less than 1.5% of the budget for the overall $7 million, $6.2 million. So to have $150,000 in there in case something happens, like a major crime, more court time, more investigative time, more detective time, those things are going to happen in a city this size. We've been lucky, knock on wood, that we haven't had anything major in the last few years, but $150,000 I think can get it eaten up fast in a city this size when it comes to overtime or anything like that. And again, to have it in holiday, it's still personal services. If you need it to transfer it to overtime or to another account, it's in there. You don't want any department to run in the red at the end of the year. And I think that, the police department have been very good at making sure that they're somewhat conservative in their budgeting process, so that at the end of the year, they're not looking for more money out of free cash, because nowadays free cash is getting leaner and leaner, and they need to have a budget that they can depend on at the end of the year. My question on is the staffing numbers that you have here for FY08 and the projected budget, the dollar value per officer comes out to more than the 63 at $2.7 million. Is there why you have less? It's with the 68, it's approximately $43,000 per, and with the 63, it's a 42 or 42.8. So there's less money budgeted. Was that because there was positions that weren't filled in at 68, or?
Yes. Yes, the FY08 budget was a split budget, if you will. It was a 91-89 budget to begin with. It was 91 intended for the first 6 months of the fiscal period. And then, in January, passed, 2 retirements were anticipated. One occurred in January, the other one didn't occur until March. That became 89 at that point. Prior to that, however, 2 officers, junior officers, that we had no idea at all of their intentions to retire. One took a lateral to Leominster, and the other resigned.
Okay. So that number is, the number hasn't gone down. Is there an increase in that number? Is there a projected
No.
increase per person?
Salary-wise, for instance, no.
I mean, it's foolish not to talk about that, because, I mean, it's overdue, and I don't understand why, if there's a plan to do that, which I hope there is, that there's nothing in that line item for that. I don't know where you're going to hide that money or where you're going to get it from, but somewhere in this budget there should be money for an increase.
It's not there, guys.
Okay, thank you.
Councilor Tran?
Thank you, Mr. President. Hi, Chief. Hi, Captain. The overtime account, does that include the CDBG fund?
No.
So that's in a separate fund.
Yes, it is.
And how much do we have in that account?
I don't know.
I'm not sure what was approved this. It was approved, the mayor approved it. I think it was approximately $70,000. 72?
Yeah, something like that. And last year, we took about 8, 9 officers off the street, and 9 of them got back on the street. Since then, has there been any increase in crime?
Well, you have the annual report in front of you, of course, that captures precisely that point in time. And I think you had Councilor Hay commenting on how somehow we've managed to keep the lid on crime in the city of Fitchburg during that precise time period. So I would have to say it was very well contained.
There's been decreases in a lot of the violent crimes in the city. That's been a national, it's been nationally decreased, though. It's just not Fitchburg's decreased because of whatever reason. It's been a national decline in violent crimes throughout the country.
So let's hope that by reduction of 4 more patrolmen that we maintain that trend. Thank you.
Councilor Salamito?
Thank you, Mr. President. Evening, Chief and Captain Tasker. As to the overtime account, and I don't know if you have it broken down, how much of the overtime account in fiscal year 2008 was allocated for the dispatches from policemen going in and relieving the civilians, as compared to the total amount of overtime?
We don't allocate a specific amount for any anticipated overtime expense.
All right. Do you know offhand how much money was spent in overtime? And I know you didn't allocate it, but do you have any idea how much money you spent in dispatch overtime? In 2008, when the police officers went on the desk?
Far less than we did when civilians were there. Far less. For instance, with civilians, we were approaching 90,000. And with the police officers, I don't have a precise number, but it would be, maybe 10,000, maybe.
And I guess the reason would be because you had extra men in the building that you could put behind the desk, correct?
Well, I mean, that's the simple way of saying it, but all of those extra men are all certified and trained.
Right.
But that is the precise reason. We were hardly up. And what I mean by that is perhaps for nothing more than a matter of days, ever fully staffed with civilian dispatches, which would have been 12 civilian dispatches. For a matter of days, we may have had 12. Typically, we had 9 or 10. And that incurred tremendous overtime as compared to the deep bench we have now with trained, certified police officers to fill those vacancies.
Meaning you have some officers assigned on the street that you somehow routinely expect are going to go on the desk due to vacation, sick time,
That's
holidays.
exactly what we did. We trained perhaps 25 certified trained dispatchers.
That sometime on an evening, you must have an officer assigned in the event there's an officer calls in sick from dispatch. You have to have somebody available to go in behind the desk. So is it fair to say that you have what they maybe call a floater available to go in behind the desk?
Well, that was the concept, of course, but it happens to depend on if that officer is working that night.
Right.
Which you understand, of course, and Officer Caddy understands, is determined by day off group and the point of need.
I think, Counselor, though, I think we don't have floaters waiting to do something. They have assignments. They may be working a particular cruiser or a little walk-in beat, and they're pulled off that assignment. There's not a floater or someone that's just waiting to get called and somebody calls in sick. Everyone has an assignment. That's right, I wasn't sure if...
No, I think
anybody
that's the answer that I was looking for.
Yeah.
And I hope I'm not going to get the answer now. We're not pulling an officer off a cruiser to answer a telephone, are we, in the event of a dispatcher calling in sick? I hope.
Today?
Yes.
You mean right now, today?
Well, not
No,
not May
we will
28th.
hire somebody on overtime to do that.
All right.
We'll maintain the cruisers out in the street.
My next question is, in 2007, your department seized $137,000, $137,854 by drug raids, I believe, or any type of a raid. And I believe by agreement with the district attorney, you get to keep 50% of that by agreement, I believe, or contract?
Well, not exactly. It's, the 50% split that you're referring to is what is the Fitchburg Police Department involved with just the district attorney's office.
All right.
But when we're involved with task force operations, that percentage decreases considerably, depending on other departments involved.
Where does that money, if any, go?
Law enforcement, drug trust fund.
All right. So does it go into salaries or?
Oh, can't be used for that.
Okay.
Can't supplant.
All right.
It's a 94C, a statutory.
Used for education, training, equipment, correct?
Yeah, protracted investigations,
Right.
Available without appropriation, sole discretion of the chief of police.
Next, the sergeants on your department went from 11 to 10, is that correct?
Yes.
Now, in 2008, the department spent approximately $516,000 on sergeant's pay. And with 10 of them, it's only going to go down to $487,000, a decrease of about $20,000. How would, I mean, assuming the sergeant makes more than $20,000, how did we go from 11 to 10 and only save $20,000?
Well, recall what I was saying earlier to Councilor Joseph about the split budget, where Sergeant O'Brien was funded for only part of the year. He was supposed to leave in January, but he ended up staying until March.
My last question, I don't want to take up a lot of time, and I know I'm going to draw the ire of some people, not the police department. Overtime for the Longzo bike race or items such as that, who compensates the police department for that overtime? Or where does that money come from? I mean, Chief, you don't know, but you're going to spend a lot of money, I think, on overtime for this bike race in Fitchburg, correct?
I would think the organization does, that puts on the event. They would hire detail officers. I may be wrong there.
Am I asking the general question of the council if they know? Maybe Councilor Boisvert? Do you know where that money comes from? Oh,
I know that the DPW is paid out of the city budget. So I don't know where the police department is paid out, but I know that the DPW is paid out of the city budget.
The general fund.
They don't.
No.
DPW.
No, police.
and if nobody knows, I apologize for the question. Mrs. Saracen, would you know?
Councilor Hay.
Council Sullivan, a couple of police officers here have indicated that the Longjo organization and their sponsors pay for the police for the...
Okay, so it doesn't cost the taxpayers, or it doesn't come out of your overtime account then, correct?
It's not overtime. And you'll understand the term, it's an actually paid detail.
Oh, it is, it's not overtime, it's a paid detail?
Yes.
Oh, all right, I apologize then. I thought it was the opposite. All right, thank you very much.
Councilor Hay.
Thank you, Mr. President. Hearing a few things I'd like to comment on, I guess. First one is, well, I applaud Councilor Di Natale's efforts to try to find money to get some new cruisers for the police department. I am concerned that, it's a bare bones budget as is, and any cuts in any line items will have effects, and we need to make sure that the chief and Captain Tasker are, at least in my opinion, in agreement to any of those before we even consider them. We then need to go the next step and make sure that the mayor is in agreement with this council as to where reallocations of any cuts will go to. It's the mayor's prerogative to do whatever she wishes with them if we make cuts, or to not do anything at all. So we have a mayor who continually speaks of transparent ongoings with the budget, and I think we need to have that be clear in a, you can't say in agreement, but the mayor needs to speak to it, and the mayor needs to speak to this council in terms of any cuts that we're making, where she intends for that money to go. There are some who think that any money that we cut should go to the stabilization account, because everybody's going to be back asking for money down the road, because the budget's so bare bones as it is. So I don't disagree with this, but I want to make sure that the mayor is on board and that we're all in agreement before we start whacking some of these line items. The other thing that I'd like to discuss is the perception that levels of crime may have stayed the same while the number of police officers have been reduced. If that is in fact true, I believe what we need to do is applaud the police department for the job that they've done under difficult circumstances, and not look at that and say, well, we can cut some more and everything will be the same. I think cutting more and then praying and hoping that things would stay the same is a dangerous game for us to play. And we need to look at these numbers, look at these levels, and understand the ramifications in the long run regarding public safety and regarding crime, and applaud a department that is short-manned and short-staffed for doing a job and keeping the numbers as they are. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. I'd like to move, just make a comment about one of the lines here. The auto repair line has been reduced by 18%. I don't think it takes a rocket scientist to figure out that the condition of the vehicles continues to worsen, yet we have a line item allowed by the mayor that's 18% lower. I will ask this to the chief. Do you think that you're going to be able to, and this is a question that we get criticized for a lot on the council. In the past, they used to say, do you have enough money? But with an 18% reduction in that line item, is that going to cause problems for your department, chief?
Clearly. Number one, I'm hoping we get new cruises some way, shape, or form from the council. But today, the transmission for one of the police cruisers costs approximately $5,000 to $8,000. In the hilly terrain that we have in the city, clearly, transmission's going off a lot. The wear and tear of the cruises, that's not a lot of money for a year, and we would probably be coming back to ask for more money in that area.
Thank you. Councilor Starr?
Actually, Councilor Hay pretty much summed up the comments that I wanted to make. In regards to doing more with less, I can't honestly say enough about the officers that you have and what they've done and what they continue to do. There's been a lot of stuff going on in the last year in the police department, and it looks like it continues here. The officers I come in contact with continue to remain positive. All they want to do is be cops, and they just want basic supplies. One of the things I've heard most often from them is the need for new cruisers. I hear it over and over again. When I look at a speedometer of a cruiser, and it's got about 190,000 miles, 180,000 miles, it's kind of scary. I don't ever intend to, well, hopefully not to have to drive my own vehicle like that. The pounding you put on them, I can't imagine the fact that they take their lives in their hands every day, and it's not just people on the street, it's the equipment that they use. It's kind of frightening. So, again, I just want to commend you for the entire force for the job that you do. Thank you.
Councilor DiMartino?
Welcome, Chief. It's great to see you here, and great to see you here, Chad. I have sat through 30 budgets, and every year we talk about cruisers, and we've all said we should get 2 cruisers every year, and that way it would work. I've been through 4 mayors, it never happened. So I'm going to bite the bullet here with a few things that I think this is not bare bones. This is a good budget, considering the economic situation we're in. And I would like to start with you, Chief. I see that you're going to get 121,000, and the last chief got 88,000. And I'm asking you, somebody told me that that was 88,000, but it wasn't really 88,000 because there was a lot of bennies that went with it. Is your 121 straight, or is there bennies besides?
It's inclusive. The prior chief got, I think, a very similar salary to what I got.
Okay.
It includes all the Quinn-Bill and all the stipends that I would have got as part of the agreement. So that's the final figure.
Because you could see where this could be very deceiving, 88 and then you're getting 120,
Yeah,
so that was one. As you may know a little, I did not vote for the last 8 policemen that came aboard. And I did do that because down the road you could see that this was going to happen. I didn't vote for the budget, and I got a lot of heat from a lot of people about it, but common sense did not prevail in the past 6 years. We're in a mess, and I don't think any police officer should drive a car that's not safe. However, when I look at the union contracts, which of course I didn't vote for either, and I see such a thing as the incentive to drive safely for the police. It's always irked me a little because the policemen should drive safe anyway. They shouldn't get an incentive to drive safe. I know I'm not making any friends here tonight. Also, then there's another thing that came in last year for safety for the gun. That was another union situation where people got a little bit more money to do that. And I thought that when you went to the academy that you had to go and learn how to shoot your gun properly and be responsible. And I even had one of the captains show me how responsible they are about their guns, and I was very impressed. But yet there is an incentive within the union contract to get more money. I think you might realize what I'm getting at. We need good cruisers. You have a great. By the way, you inherited a great force, which I did tell you before.
I noticed that.
We had a little chat about that, and I think that we have to bite the bullet. I think it's a shame that we got the last 6 men because now we trained them. And it's a lot of money that we spent sending them to the academy. And now other cities and towns can pick them up free of charge. I think it was a waste of our taxpayers' dollars because it should never have happened. Not saying that the 6 people were a waste, they were great people. It was a bad investment. Sitting listening to all of this, and I look at the overtime, I look at this, and we all have different ideas. Everybody in this city has to do more with less, and the police will have to do the same, and the fire place. But every time we go to a budget, I always hear fire and police. I never hear anyone mentioning all the other departments who work very hard for this city, the DPW who are totally understaffed, the people who come in and do more with less. We're all in it together. We're in a recession. Our houses, our values are going down. Our tax base will be going down even more next year. It'll be worse next year than this year. And I think that we all have to be fair. Now, I would like to say something which you probably won't do very well, but say if you took the money out that the union already has contracted, which I know contracts, you all have to do what the union says, and you gave back that money for not driving your car recklessly and for not using your gun on the wrong person. Is it possible you could keep some of your men and women? That isn't my question. I know the answer is no, but it's a good common sense question, isn't it? Could you take less and keep your men and women?
Councilor, the police officers, as is the case with all city employees, making less without even having to give up anything.
I know.
It's happening. The thought of these men and women getting a penny less is nauseating.
It's okay. I just thought I'd ask. I don't mean to insult anybody. I'm
I
just
know
saying,
you do.
you know, you've known me for a long time, Chair. I'm just saying that This is a very difficult time, and we're going to get worse. I was reading that the recession is going to get worse. Our values of our houses are going to go down, our tax bases. We're not even going to be able to do this good next year, maybe. So it's a real thing. And it is to do with 6 years and maybe even more mismanagement. And we're all paying for it. We're all paying for it now. But I don't mean to upset anybody, but,
Well,
you know...
I think, Councillor, you can't look at the police unions or the police department in general and say they have to bear the burden of as in your words, poor management over the years. I think what you have to look at is collectively throughout the state, almost every other police department out there that I know are hiring police officers. They're giving them raises. So there's things that are good things, and our officers are looking at that. I don't want to lose any officers. None of the officers that are potentially being laid off want to leave. They want to stay here. They love the city. They've grown up here. They always wanted to be a police officer in the city they grew up in. They're passionate about their work. It's disheartening to all of us that we may lose any officers to layoffs. What they've worked for over the course of years to try to get in salary benefits is something that we all strive for in any of our jobs that we have, is to do better for ourselves and to go in and do a good job every day. And I haven't found a police officer that hasn't gone here and done a good job every day since I've been here, even though it's been a short time. I can usually pick out the slackers. I haven't met one yet. I'm very impressed with this organization. I'm impressed with the output that they come to work every day. They still come to work in these conditions, not using sick time, not using vacation. They're coming to work to see if they can make it better. We've been with the union, we've been meeting with the union probably twice a week now on these issues. How can we make this work? How can we make it work with, we know the city's hurting, we know, how can we still make it work? So clearly, they're here, the union representatives in the room tonight, they're here to listen to say, because they want it to work. They don't want to lose officers. None of us in the city wants to lose one officer, never mind potentially 6. So I think collectively, when you look at this, how do we make it better for the people that are working here? How do we make it better for the people that potentially could leave? I look at that as an administrator of the department saying, if we are going to lay off, how can I help the persons that this may affect? Well, I went around and spoke to all the chiefs and asked them if they were going to hire, could they potentially look at any of our officers that may be looking to be laid off? And they said they would. So that's the part that I could take. I can't put money in their pockets. That's not my role here. I think my role is to kind of find out how we help them, because they're here to help us. They're out there every day helping the community.
Just one last comment. I see the police as a family, just like I see the fire as a family, and you're all in the same family. And if you're going to lose 6 of your family, what I'm saying to you, can you not do more with less to keep the 6? That's really what I'm saying. Maybe it makes, that's all I'm saying. I always say that. Thank you very much.
Counselor, I agree with your common sense approach. We do have contractual obligations. And those contractual obligations start right at the front of the building, in the corner office, and the other corner office where the Human Resources Department is. When those people come to the table and bargain, they have to bargain in good faith. I believe that they will continue to bargain in good faith, but I do not believe in taking away things that people have bargained for. We'd like to, maybe get some money back, get some benefits back, but let's face it, folks, we can't. We've got to move on. We've got to do the best we can with what we have. And our officers put their life on the line every single day when they step out of 20 Elm Street. Councilor Clark?
Thank you, Mr. President, and Chief and Captain, thank you for being here. I think everybody in this room values safety in our schools, and I'd like to know what the status is currently, whether it be the DARE program or learning resource officers. And I know it's been done different ways. The police department have handled the budget of having one of the guys in the school. It's been 50-50. I guess what I'm asking is the status of police officers in schools in the upcoming year. Have there been any talks with the superintendent about budget-wise? Because I think the school department budget, even though we don't have it in front of us, is a bit better this year than it has been in the past couple of years.
I actually met with the superintendent of schools this afternoon at 1 o'clock in his office, and this is the problem. We talked about school resource officers. Clearly, losing 6 officers in the city of this size, we have to look at where do we take them from. And just fortunately enough, right now, the school year is ending, so that position is slated to be vacant for the upcoming school year. I'm not saying that it's going to be. Right now, it will be vacant, and we're taking the school resource officer and reassigning that position. But during our conversation, I advised the superintendent that there was a grant that's available, and it has to be submitted within, I think, the next 60 days. That we're working on it right now, that partners up with schools and allows us to potentially hire school resource officers out of it. So that's a grant that we're looking at right now. It's a work in progress from my office. Hopefully, if we do get some funding here, we may be able to, I'm not sure if it's soon enough to retain somebody. I don't think it will be, but I think it's something that we're looking at down the road that, I actually went to the school department and asked them to pay for 3 school resource officers. The superintendent said he doesn't have the money, but as a collaborative effort, I think there may be something that we can do in the future. And these grants are available regularly that come out from the Department of Justice. So, these are the things that we're looking at in the department now that we're really focused on to partner up with Fitchburg State College or the local schools.
I think it's very important. I think that there are things that have not happened because we've had an officer in the school.
Clearly, very important position. You can't determine what he prevented from happening, or the police officer prevents from happening. My son once met a school resource officer. He never used drugs. I think it was because of that meeting. He told me it was, so I have to believe him. So you don't know how that happens and affects people, individuals, students' lives, throughout their lives.
I know that the schools are still going through their difficult times because they had some incredible cuts to make last year, but I will, and I hope other counselors will mention to the superintendent and members of the school committee that this is a very important part of the school budget. Thank you.
Councilor Di Natale.
Thank you. Chief, Captain, how much does it cost to keep one of those officers that's being laid off? What's the average amount, salary plus benefits? What would it come to?
A good number to use where you won't be that bad off is 60,000. Might be 55, but 60,000 is not a bad number to use.
Okay, and when I was looking through this budget and I came up with some suggestions, I know that a lot of councils would probably be hesitant to entertain them because of what you're losing. And I in no way intended to sound that I believe your budget's padded. I understand, because I do budgets every day, that you have to use contingency for emergencies. That's no question. But again, in FY06 and in FY07, the personal services account has been underrun by $416,000. And this is where I wish I had a crystal ball to tell where we're going to fall in at, because how many officers could we keep with that 416 if we didn't allocate it elsewhere? But obviously, that's not the real world.
Councilor, on that point, Mayor?
Yes.
When you say you did something like that, where you said, okay, we have X amount of money, we can bring these officers, or have these officers stay here. What comes along with that is vacation time,
right,
and all these other benefits that now we had to use that money to pay the positions on overtime. So, regardless if it's not completely funded in a budget, that we can't just say, take it out of the overtime account and that will take care of everything. It really doesn't, because that increases the overtime that we have to spend per year to replace that officer wherever he may land on a bid.
Well, due to your input, I personally will not pursue the overtime cut. The holiday I feel more strongly about. The $47,000, that's almost a police officer if you want to look at it that way. you know, I've been quoted as saying that I see about $500,000 that we could potentially go after in this whole budget. And, you know, the issue with fairness for me doesn't even apply. I will gladly vote to take money out of another department to put into yours to give you officers or cops, cruisers, excuse me. But you just stated earlier that transmission blew today. And what good are having the officers if they're being called to a scene and the car breaks down? And that's why, to me, the cars are more important. And the $47,000 that I would like to see moved would purchase one cruiser from one line item account. And I will look everywhere else to get 5. I'm not asking that we do 150 from your budget and move it to, and I understand Councilor Hayes saying that it's the mayor's decision. I fully understand that. I would sleep better at night if I cut money from anywhere and gave her the opportunity to say, here's money that's been freed up to buy 5 cruisers and maybe even save public safety jobs. And if she chooses not to do that, that's her choice. But I would be very surprised if she chose not to do that. If she had the opportunity to give the police new cruisers and maybe even restore a couple of jobs with cuts that we make, she's got to answer to the public for that. And all I want to do is give her that opportunity to make that decision with, you know, hopefully our unified backing and your backing as well, since you are the expert. But that's how I look at it. It's a matter of prioritization and reallocation. As I stated earlier, I don't want to cut anything from your budget where I don't see that it has to be. But, you know, regardless of the reason, $416,000 was the underrun the last 2 years. Holidays look like we're going to underrun about $100,000. I'm only requesting we cut 47, leaving more to spend next year than what's being spent this year. And my logic is that 47,000, heck, I'll cut it 35. I'll suggest we cut 35 to get you one car from that amount and then put that other 12, keep that 12 in holiday. But that's where I'm coming from, is that one cut will get us one car. And I believe that cut won't put us in dire straits, just based on 3 years of financial data, even though I understand we're losing 6 guys now. And I can't speak for the mayor on why she cut auto repair, but maybe the logic is because auto repair was funded at $80,000 this year, and through April, we've only spent 43% of that number. So maybe that's why she decided maybe 65,900 is a better number. And maybe that should even be lower if we buy new cars. But again, I'm just going on 3 years of financial data, and any cuts that I wanted to make to the police budget, I want to see stay within the budget, your budget, moved elsewhere. And there are going to be cuts elsewhere that I'd like to recommend that will go to a funding public safety needs. But that's just where I'm coming from. The cruisers are very important to me, and the $47,000 from the holiday account, or let's just say 35, how much would it be for one cruiser on average? 25,000. So that 47,000 could probably fund 2. And my logic in doing it again is because even with that cut, it still leaves more to spend next year than what you're spending now. So I'm not saying that what you're spending this year, if you spend $300,000 this year, that we cut it, we give you $250 next year. I'm not asking that. I'm saying if you're spending $300 this year and the mayor's going to give you $400, let's see how we do at $350. It's still more than last year, and buy 2 cruisers. Just from a priority standpoint, because again, the safety of these officers is my top priority, and I understand the risk we take. If we cut that, the mayor may put it somewhere else. That's her choice, but I want to give her the opportunity to make that decision, and I'd be very shocked if she didn't make that decision. She has to answer to the public for that decision, that she had the opportunity to give money for cruisers and keep officers, and she chose not to. But giving her that opportunity, we may not know what happens, but that's my logic, and in no way do I think you're padding it. I'm just trying to find some ideas to move it around a little bit. And obviously, I don't speak alone, so it would have to get approval elsewhere. But that was my priority, and, you know, listening to what you said about overtime, I was going to go with 50,000 overtime, but I won't even consider that now. Based on your explanation, makes perfect sense. But the holiday account, I do feel strongly about. And if it's 25,000 per car, 125,000 for 5, I'm 100% confident we can find 125 in this entire budget to give the mayor the opportunity to buy 5 cars. Thank you.
Councilors, I'd like to move off the cruiser issue. We've gone round and round on the cruiser issue. I think we all know how we feel about the cruiser issue. It's an administrative decision. It's not our decision. I don't think there's anybody in this room that can afford to go out right now and purchase a brand-new car without taking a loan out for it. I do not want to put the financial team in a spot, and they can defer to answer this question, but I believe I heard last night that we did not have to borrow any money during the last quarter. Is that correct?
No additional money.
No additional monies. So, I think maybe we should send a letter to the mayor, asking the mayor to consider a very short-term loan to purchase cruisers for the police department. And I know that the chief, I have every confidence in the chief, that he's heard enough here tonight that he's going to have a long-range plan for cruiser replacement. There's no doubt about that. Maybe because we're in severe financial straits, it'll get shot down. But there's only one way we're going to get cruisers for the police department, and that's to get a short-term loan, period. And I hope that we can continue to move on with this budget without beating the hell out of the cruiser issue. Thank you. Any further questions on the police department budget?
You said it all.
Gentlemen, would you like to make any type of closing statement?
I think in closing, I appreciate the council's concern for the police department. The membership is behind you on that. They think, I think for them in the area of safety every day, to make sure, I think my primary responsibility as being the chief is their safety. To make sure when they come to work, they go home at night. And clearly, I hear somewhat of a mandate from this council that I feel that at some point we'll get through this. And long-range plans for the police department, I think, you know, as we make them, as we go on in the next few weeks inside and think about what's best for the community as a whole, I think the council will appreciate it.
Before you leave, gentlemen, I still have one councilor's name on my list here that had a question. Councilor Bove?
I don't have a question, I have a comment.
Yes, sir.
I looked over this budget for the police department, and it is down to bare bones. We are putting the safety of our officers at risk. It is something that I just can't, unconscionable, I can't wrap my head around this, putting the safety of our police officers at risk. They do a marvelous job for the public, and it's just a shame that we have got to do this to correct the sins of the past. The past being the past several administrations. We should be doing everything possible to not be taking from the police department, but to be giving to them. Thank you.
Chief Demora, Captain Tasker, thank you very much for appearing here tonight, presenting your budget, and we wish you, the officers, best of luck. And we do need some luck, but you do have a well-trained force who do a good job under very strenuous conditions. Thanks again.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Council. Smash.
We'll take a 5-minute recess, councilors, and we will pick up the remaining budgets of the city clerk, council, license commission, and elections. Councilors, we will resume our deliberations on the
I got a file, that's all.
FY09 budget. City Clerk Anna Farrell is moved from this chair to the front and center. Pleasure to have you before us. You do a fine job for the city council, and as we have done in the past, we would like to ask those people that come before us if they would like to make an opening statement, and then we will run through the budget.
Thank you. Just direct your attention to the overview that's in the city budget. I won't read the mission statement, it's there. Correct. I would just like to point out that originally, when the overview was submitted, there were 4 separate overviews: city clerk, city council, elections, and license commission. And that was done per direction of the mayor. When it was condensed to this one page, inadvertently, some of the sections were omitted. And I did supply you with the corrected version. What's before you in the actual book does need to be out. So as far as the functions of the department go, there is one of the functions listed here, and that is the city clerk function or division. That includes public records management, vital records management, public information, issuing and processing various licenses and permits. I'd also like to add to that the office provides administrative support to the city council, administrative support to the license commission, and the sole responsibility for administering all aspects of voter registration and all local, state, and federal elections for the city. The organization of the department is correct. We have a total of 4 staff, myself, the assistant city clerk, and 2 principal clerks. If you break that down into FTEs, full-time equivalents, for the city clerk function, we have 1 3/4 people. For the city council function, we have a half a person. For elections, we have 1 1/4 people. For license commission, we have half a person. That's when everyone is present. Factoring in vacation, personal, and sick time, for about half of the year, we function with 3 people in total. The fiscal year '09 budget priorities that are listed here have to be somewhat curtailed. Those priorities were projected based on the addition of 1 half-time clerical person, whose primary responsibilities would have been attendance at license commission meetings and subsequent follow-up, database management, document management, and elections support. The additional half-time person would also have allowed for increased cross-training amongst the 4 existing staff. Before we actually start looking at the line items, I'd just like to point out that on page 10, city clerk personnel, in my original budget submission, I did request a half-time additional clerical position in the amount of $18,531. That is not shown here. It's not shown that it was requested or zeroed out. I also requested $60,000 in the city clerk expense for a high-density storage and filing system to retrofit the main downstairs vault, which would have tripled the capacity of the vault. And also on page 8, I requested a city council expense of $1,000 for city council travel and meetings. I'd just like to say that I want to make it very clear that I'm very aware and sensitive to the fact that we're in dire financial straits. I understand that adding personnel at this time is not feasible, given the fact that we are cutting existing staff. Nor is it feasible to spend $60,000 to retrofit the vault. I do, however, feel that it's my responsibility, and I would be remiss if I did not identify important needs in my department and request funding for those needs. The city clerk's office is central to city government, and we have functioned for years by hanging on and managing to do our jobs with minimal staffing, the most frugal of spending, and marginal working conditions at best. There comes a time when the demands exceed the resources, and we have reached that point. Please bear in mind that I am not complaining. I'm not demanding anything. I am very happy to see level funding being recommended for this year, given what's going on elsewhere. I'm simply bringing these needs to your attention, to bookmark them, and to hope that they will be remembered in the future when we pull ourselves out of this financial mess.
Questions, councilors, on the city clerk's budget? Well, I guess we can back up and say on city council's and city council expense budget, which actually is first. Everything is level funded. Councilor Joseph?
I guess I was just asking if we do this sort of a budget again in the future, that the city council is allowed to have a mission, some accomplishments, and some priorities for the upcoming year as determined by one of the groups set by the president or something, because, again, I think that we all should have an idea of what we've done over the past year and how we feel about that and what we plan on doing over the next year. And to see that page missing, I think, is just selling us a little bit short, because I think that we have done some great accomplishments, or some accomplishments, and I think that we should have an idea of where we want to go from here. So I would hope in the future would have also accomplishments and priorities for the council for upcoming years. Thank you.
Councilor Di Natale.
Thank you. Just for future discussion, when we convene for the final votes, based on the vote that the council took last year, I would like to make a suggestion for future consideration that city council personal services be reduced by $11,000. Thank you.
Councilor Hay.
Thank you, Mr. President. I guess my question would be in response to the clerk's comments regarding the budget that she submitted to the mayor in the request with the halftime clerk position in the vault, and I appreciate her understanding that those were not funded because of the situation that we're in, and I appreciate that. But if I could, to the mayor, were those inadvertently left out here, or will we, in other department budgets as we go through this, will there be items that were requested that we'll never see that there was a request and that you chose not to fund it?
I can speak specifically about each item as we go, because they do fall in all categories. First, let me say that one of the things you'll see different in this budget is a matching of the line items to munis numbers. And as you can see, for example, city clerk expenses 404, 405, 408. So obviously not all line items are included in the budget. Just want to make a note of that. The halftime clerk is actually embodied in the line item clerical 51102. You'll see that the department request is $97,458. So the $18,000 difference is embodied there in terms of a request.
Got it.
The item of the storage, that is a capital item. I've taken a number of capital items and I've set them outside of the operating budget because my intention is to create a capital budget, one that includes things like police cruisers, I know that you discussed earlier tonight, physical things to the building. I'll throw it out there, there are some communities that let's say they have $100 million in revenue, a third of that budget goes towards their capital budget. We have just a operating budget. So right now we have a very, very bare bones capital budget, as you can see. Those are things we typically zero out. I've pulled out those things. They are being compiled right now into a capital budget because there are a number of items that do get forgotten from year to year to year. So the council will be seeing that. That is going to take a while to compile because I'm asking people to go back multiple years. And in terms of the travel expense for the council, that is something that hasn't been expended for a number of years. And I did speak to a few councilors to kind of get their opinion on whether that should be included or not. I did make that decision not to include it, but it is, I will go through the budget and make notes like that. There are reasons why I didn't include things, especially if they hadn't been seen for a number of reasons, or a number of years, or if I was going to include in a capital line item, but those are those were things that I did carefully consider when putting this together.
Thank you for the clarification.
I'd like to make just one comment of the $1,000 city council travel expense. I think many councilors were unaware that some of these things existed. Some of us who go to the MMA meeting in January have paid our own expenses, and rightly so, but some people may need some assistance in going to the MMA, which is a fine organization, and this council would benefit greatly by sitting in on some of the sessions that the MMA puts on in January. Just a comment. Any other questions? Councilor Di Natale?
Thank you. Mrs. Farrell, document restoration and storage. Yesterday, we transferred money from there to City Council Personal Services. I just wanted to know, what was the reason that we didn't need to use that account this year?
We've been under a directive to freeze spending, so although I could have used all of that money and more, I didn't spend it.
So 2,000 is extremely low for that line item account. Okay. And are we also discussing license commissioner, or is that separate? Sorry.
We'll get through this first.
Okay, I'm all set then.
The issue of the documentation and storage of documentations, I believe, and someone here probably could verify, there was a petition passed by this council, forwarded to the previous administration to look into that issue. Am I correct, Madam Clerk?
Yes.
Yeah. We a lot of our documents are unprotected, very vulnerable right now, and have been for many years. Any further questions on the city clerk? Councilor DiMartino?
It's not a question, it's a statement. As you know, the police were here tonight, and, you know, they're very valued people, and so is the fire, and so is everybody. But I have to say, it is a pleasure to go into the city clerk's office and meet with the city clerk and all the staff, and they do a great job. And in these times of crisis, it's great to know that people, our good people that we have, are so just wonderful people, and we have so many wonderful staff in Fitchburg and in the City Hall, and I just didn't want to go, we're all nervous and we're all it's negative and stress. I think it's nice sometimes to point out all the good things we have, and our city clerk is one of them, so that's what I wanted to say. Thank you.
Mayor Wong, did you have something you wanted to address?
I did. I just wanted to let people know about just document storage in general. One of the first things that we did when he came here is to really physically look at all the offices at City Hall. And document storage is not just a challenge for the city clerk's office, it's actually for a number of different departments. So this is something that I'd actually like to figure out how to solve collectively. If each department is facing a similar issue in terms of document storage, we are going to continue to talk about the best cost approach to solving this issue. Certainly finding more space somewhere, or being able to put some of these files in digital format. So this is one of the number of challenges that we are all looking at collectively.
Further questions for the city clerk? Councilor Joseph.
Just a comment, follow-up to Councilor DiMartino's comment. I didn't realize that anybody in the city clerk's office had vacation time. Every time I walk in there, the same people are in the same place,
Yeah.
day in and day out. So they must take their vacation time nights and weekends, but it's always a dedicated job, and I always see the faces in there, and they're always very willing to do the work that you ask them to do. So I'm surprised they do have vacation and personal time, because they're always there.
Any question, Counselor Starr?
I don't want to be too repetitive, but thank you for answering all the questions that I thought was stupid over the last 4 months, and you didn't make me feel stupid when I asked them, so thank you. That's why I didn't ask my colleagues. Thank you.
No further questions on the city council's expense, the city clerk's license commission.
Good evening, Council. I thought you'd do this all at once.
We want to keep you in suspense. If you'd like to make an opening statement, or would you like to take questions, councilors, on page 10 at the bottom of the page. License Commission Personal Services. Everything is level funded. Office supplies reduced 3%. The total License Commission expense is down 2%. Does anyone have any questions for the License Commission? I'm sure that, Commissioner, you don't do this for the high salary that you receive. Councilor Di Natale?
Very quickly, office supplies, I understand there is a spending freeze. Through 10 months, only 21% of your office supply budget has been spent. Your budget, your budget allocated is $1,500, and so far this year, you've spent $300. Can you survive on $500 next year?
May I respond?
Yes, Madam Clerk.
Please.
Actually, as of today and projected towards the end of the year, the balance in the office supplies account will be about $600.
Remaining? Or
Projected.
projecting to spend
Yeah.
600?
No,
Okay.
that'll be the balance remaining.
Okay.
$600.
Okay, thank you.
Councilor Tran?
Thank you, Mr. President. Can you refresh my memory to where the $6,200 going to under the License Commission personal, where's the $6,200 going to?
Salaries.
It's salary for
The license commission.
all three members? Is that dictated by an ordinance?
I believe it is.
It is?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Anything further on the License Commission? Seeing none?
Can I
Yes,
just
yes, you may.
add something? When Anna talked about adding a half clerk, we had a request from the mayor to look at our fees for the licenses and permits. We've just gone up in our fees recently, but one of the discussions was that we thought we could get an extra clerk in her office that would consider looking at our fees and going up a little bit more. I'm amazed at what gets done in there, as you've all said. The people are always there, they're always willing to help. And honestly, the reason I'm still here is because of working with Anna and the people in there. They make it so easy. And, but we have some times when it's just
hectic, unbelievable. The end of the year especially, the June and July when all the permits are done. And again, I'm amazed that it all gets done. But more and more things are being added to the license process for the liquor licenses. And one of the big things in the past couple of years is the certificate that the building department and fire department have to sign off on. For whatever reason, it's always last minute, and but they always get done. But it's hectic. So another half a person in there for those kinds of times would help tremendously.
I would like to make a comment, too, about the License Commission minutes of the meetings. I think that the lights are hardly extinguished at night after the meeting, and Anna has the minutes on your computer the next morning. I mean, it's amazing we get them so rapidly, and I thank her for that. Over in the corner, Mr. Salamito.
Thank you, Mr. President. And I may be out of order because I may be going back to the city clerk. About a month ago or 2 months ago, we spoke with the Zoning Board of Appeals, and I believe it was Mr. Pusateri, who addressed that through the Zoning Board of Appeals, they had no help whatsoever doing the secretarial work. And if I'm asking for the wrong department, if that department's going to come before us later on, I apologize. But is that department, does the city clerk help out, or can they help out, or how can the Zoning Board of Appeals get any help as far as their secretarial or administrative work?
We accept the applications for the CPA.
Right.
We have them on file. The building department sends them down to us to get the information to fill out the applications. And then they bring them back in and they file.
Right.
And we send them along to the CPA. My understanding is that Michael Harron from the planning office has been filling in temporarily. I don't know what the long-range plans are for that.
Only because I know that Lauren McNamara was just working a lot of hours for nothing, and I don't think she was going to be able to do it. And I know that they were looking for additional, maybe a half a clerical position. Is that anything the city clerk would have any control over, or would that be under the building department? No? Maybe I shouldn't be asking it now.
Yeah, I have not been asked to absorb those tasks in my office. I hope I'm not.
Councilor, the mayor can respond to that.
Thank you for that.
The zoning board has been under the building division, and we did look at the request for personnel to cover zoning, and as part of the reorganization, building and planning and the Industrial Development Commission are now under one department. There have been staff reductions in those three altogether.
Right.
But the hope is, as part of the reorganization, they can share resources amongst them to achieve common goals. So one of the things that they will be doing is they will be sharing clerical staff to not just cover their existing functions, but also to try and cover zoning. But as you can see, what I found is that people in the city have been incredibly helpful in if they have some extra time. The planning office has lent help to the Board of Health recently, and has lent some help to cover zoning, some of the zoning things. There is going to be some of that movement, that fluid movement, as people have certain busy seasons, or as new projects come up. But in a time where, with so many departments, by consolidating, they're able to share those resources much more easily. But it is still, it's certainly a challenge still.
Thank you very much.
Further questions? Councilor Joseph, you had a question?
I just want to comment as a license holder in another city. I know that they have a person specific to a clerk for the License Commission, as well as doing the licensing at the end of the year. And not only is it a stressful time for the people that are issuing the permits, it's a very stressful time for the people that are trying to get a permit, because you have to do building inspection, fire inspection, and get the license commission in Boston to approve your license at the same time. So I can't imagine that being a responsibility of our city clerk in December to do, I don't know how many licenses we have here in the city, but it's astronomical, and it's very labor-intensive, and it's got to take away from the job function that we would expect her to do at that time of year, or any time of year. So I would hope that in the future we could support a clerk just for the license commission. It works in other places.
Thank you. Any other questions for the License Commission? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
The elections, I only had one question myself, if I may. I noticed that the street listing has gone up, the printing. Is that the one that we charge $20 for?
Yes.
I'm just wondering if we're not covering the cost of that. Maybe we could consider increasing the price of that booklet. It's still a bargain probably at $25, because I believe a lot of businesses probably use that, and I know I refer to it quite frequently. So maybe in the future year, FY10, we might consider increasing the price of that. I know right away somebody's going to say, well, another fee, but you know, we probably have to cover what it's costing us to produce it. It's a very, very well done booklet. Any questions regarding elections for the clerk? I know that that's a very labor-intensive job as well, trying to get all the people lined up, setting up the machines, et cetera, and working with the Secretary of State's office. Do a fine job in that particular area, Anna. Councilor Hay.
I'd just like to comment regarding the elections at these, and since you mentioned the Secretary of State, how they added a burden and added work for the city clerks across the Commonwealth this year when they moved the primaries. And everybody thought, well, you just make a random decision and you change the date and you make it earlier and everything will work itself out. Well, the reality is that Ms. Farrell and her staff already work hard at doing it, and the time was shortened and the work was doubled, and they still did it flawlessly, and they should be applauded for that.
Any further questions? Councilor Di Natale?
Just very quickly, election accounts have been cut by 22%, personal services and expenses over this current year. We have a primary coming up after July 1st and the presidential election. I mean, are you going to be able to handle that with, what do we have, how many election workers do we have this year? This says 78. Did we have more than 78 this year?
The reason that it's less is that we have 2 elections this year. We had 3 last year.
Okay. Thank you.
The one question that I thought of when Councilor Di Natale was talking, the police officers that work the polls, does that come out of your budget, or is that an extra detail for the police?
It does not come in.
Thank you. Any further questions, councilors? Our next session will be Wednesday, June 4th, again beginning at 7 p.m. We have a regular council meeting on Tuesday night.
Move we adjourn.
Second.
Motion made